All right, we're off. So I guess we'll follow the usual procedure. Um,
You might announce that we don't have a quorum.
we don't have a quorum, so we won't be making any decisions this evening, but we're going to go ahead and talk about the things that are on our agenda anyway. And the first thing we should do is adopt the agenda. Can we decide to do that?
Let's just discuss some of the items that we
Okay.
plan to do on our agenda.
So we do have somebody here, Kevin Fryer, for oral communications. We're delighted.
Come on down.
Well, hi. I'm sorry you have a small group tonight, but I just wanted to bring some things to your attention. I thought I'd come down and talk to you about some items that we're in discussion on Parks and Rec. For those out in TV land, my name is Kevin Fryer. I am currently serving as chair of the Parks and Rec Commission. And I have really 3 items, and the first one is a little controversial, so I'm going to get that out of the way first, and bear with me, okay, to hear this out. We are having a conversation at Parks and Recs about changing the signboards to digital. Now, I know the reaction, the initial reaction to that, but there's some thinking behind that. First of all, I know the value of this resource. Live at Mission Blue gets put up on that signboard, and I can see the hits on our website jump. So it's a very valuable communicating vehicle. Years ago, it used to be done by hand, and Russ did it, painted it by hand, and it was really quite charming. When we made the change, there was some objection to it being changed to this current system that we have. But here's what I think most people don't know, and that is the paper that we use now is not recyclable. It goes into landfill. We are putting about a ton of paper a year into landfill. It also costs in expense $7,000 a year. That machine has had to be replaced once already, which was at a cost of $3,000. So this is not really, while I understand that it's very sentimental, this is not in line with the values of our community as an environmental community. So this is why we're taking a look at it. Parks and Rec did do a needs assessment survey, and this was one of the questions that was on it. And the way it came back was 1/3 were opposed, 1/3 were in favor, and 1/3 had no opinion. But these statistics are perhaps a little misleading because, first of all, it wasn't a very big sampling. And second of all, on the comments section, which is where people really tell what they think, there was very strong opposition. So I know that the community loves this institution, and the idea of changing it is a tough thing to think about. However, it is putting paper into the landfill. The other thing about it is when we have big storms, those things shed. And there's one anecdotal story about a piece of that sign being found all the way out at the marina, which means that we are littering the mountainside and the bay. Now, the challenge is, what would we replace it with? And we're really aware that if you replace it with an Amber Alert sign, I don't want to replace it with an Amber Alert kind of sign. At $7,000 a year, that doesn't include staff cost. Our thinking is, well, geez, amortize that over 5, even 10 years, and we could really look at something quite extraordinary, something that is a low-light digital display, maintaining the current structure that is there and putting the digital display within that structure. Perhaps solar panels that provide electricity for it. The signboard that's here in town is really, quite charming. Not just what's printed on it, but its whole surround. And we're just at the beginnings of these conversations. But one thing would be, can we preserve it? Now, the signboard up at the ridge, however, is ugly. It's an afterthought, and it is just ugly. There's nothing charming about it whatsoever. So let's see if I got everything here. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say about our conversations, and we are just having conversations about this, is that if we did change it, it is now programmable, and you could do things like at the Ridge signboard, the night of Spring Thing, tonight, Spring Thing, Mission Blue Center, Brisbane Dance Workshop live at Mission Blue. It does give us a little more versatility in terms of what we can do, changing up announcements and so on. So I bring this to you because it is, I know it's going to be a tough conversation for our community. I know there's going to be a lot of resistance in our community, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because it is an environmental issue, because over the last decade, we have put 10 tons of non-recyclable paper into our landfill. So that was one. That was the hard one.
Do we get to discuss it?
Yeah, are we
Well,
gonna?
Oh, first of all, we should say that we are.
Yeah,
Now a
I don't know.
quorum.
When we do public comment, sometimes I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss it or if you need to agendize it. What's your policy here?
Well, I think if we were going to officially make any recommendation.
Yeah, we can't do that.
we
Okay.
could agendize it,
But-
discuss and ask questions.
Okay.
Questions.
Let me ask Kevin, would you prefer us to ask you questions item by item, or would you prefer we save our questions till the end?
Why don't I go through the whole thing, and
All right.
then we can have a discussion to the extent you want to have a discussion. And I should say these are things we're having conversations about. These aren't policies that we've made. These are things that we are interested in, and we think these intersect with with open space and ecology.
Kevin, can we take a break just quickly so that we can call the meeting to order? We now have a quorum.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we now do have a quorum. We will need to adopt the agenda, but let's do that after we hear from Kevin, and we'll proceed as usual. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm late. I had
No,
work
we're
stuff.
really happy you're here.
I'm really happy I'm here too.
Okay.
Hi, Kevin.
The second and the third things are sort of related, and that is we are having big conversations about the Crocker Trail. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but the city has received a grant to pave Crocker Trail with stabilized, decomposed granite surfacing that makes it suitable for walking, biking, jogging, wheelchair access. This grant is in the amount of $885,000, and at the
How
city,
much?
$885,000. At the City Council's goal-setting workshop last Sunday, under capital improvements, the city made it a priority to fund the remaining $115,000 needed to make this improvement. Now, we're very interested and very excited about this for a number of reasons. We think that the Crocker Trail is an underutilized recreation facility. It is an important connector between central Brisbane and the Ridge. We are very interested in expanding upon that once that's done through such programs as public art. You're all aware we have a public arts ordinance, and now as of this fall, we have implementation guidelines which mandate the formation of a public arts committee, which will happen sometime this spring. The public arts ordinance has been triggered a number of times to a total amount of $400,000, of which $70,000 has been allocated for the restoration of the mural on the side of Midtown Market, and then the first commission of a public arts installation, which will be in the new library, because the new library mandates public art. But that leaves a fair amount of public art funding that we have and that we will continue to accrue. We're very interested in adding public art as a element to soften the juxtaposition of a industrial park against what is sometimes really a very beautiful natural experience of the Crocker Trail. We know, and Keem and I have had a conversation because we're both on a subcommittee, we know that there's also money from the sale of
Shinkai Bakery property.
Exactly. And I know you guys had discussed using some of those funds towards increasing a path on Firth Canyon, and I believe that's being looked into in terms of what those costs are. But
Also acquisition of more acreage.
Yes, okay, but here's what I'm suggesting to you, that in order to make this connector more viable, more attractive for people to utilize, that it would be good to showcase some of the environmental aspects that there are on Crocker Trail, and that funding for that, where that comes, how we do that, and you're more aware of what those physical things are, those physicalities are. On any given Sunday morning, right now, I walk the trail a lot because it's close to where I live, and I'm of the age where walking is my exercise. And I'll run into about maybe 20 people on a really good Sunday. But mostly it's underutilized. We'd like to see that become a really good connector between the two communities. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because I think there are a lot of natural features on that would be of interest to you to preserve, to restore, and so on. And the last bit, and this is one of those features that I'm really quite interested in, and that is, I call it the meadow. It's this meadow that's up at the very top end. It's a long, thin strip of land. If you're walking the Crocker Trail, there's sort of a natural split, and you go up into this meadow. One of the things, for example, we could do, that meadow actually needs a return back down to the trail. If you walk the whole thing, you return down to the trail. That's maybe something that the city, that open space would be interested in advocating for. We might be interested in advocating for. That also along that there is frog habitat along that stretch. You guys know where I'm talking about? Okay, fine. But here is the last little bit. There is currently a business there. It is the Canine Comrades Dog Training Facility, which has basically closed that whole thing off. And it first came to our attention when one of our commissioners was walking with his son up there. And you come up, the way you see it when you're walking the trail is you come up to the back side of it, and there's nobody there, there's dogs barking, there's no trespassing. It's a little formidable. So we inquired about it, and we've only got the business. You can look it up online. It's popular. They're doing a good thing. It's a great business. But the response we got back from the city was two things. It's on a short-term lease, and secondly, that it was not within our purview to really inquire about it because it's not a Parks and Rec facility. So my question is this open space? Do you consider this open space? Is this within your purview? We're trying to figure out how it got there. It now makes that impassable. It has completely changed the profile of the meadow space because they drive trucks and so on up into that back area. So now there's actually two roads where it used to be just meadow. And of course, I think our bigger interest is how long will it be there? Because in the 2 years or so between now and the time when this resurfacing happens, and maybe some public art and maybe some other things happen to develop this facility, we see that as an important feature of the Crocker Trail that people might want to utilize. So that's all I've got for you.
I thought you said you had 3 items.
That was 1, 2, and the meadow was 3.
Okay. So I have some comments on all 3 items.
Yes,
Some questions?
The next Park and Rec meeting, the second Wednesday, would be the 14th then?
I believe so, yeah.
So I have a question about the signboard. I'm really leery of digital signboards. Those really bright.
Yes, we are too.
They're just pretty awful.
We are too.
I wonder, have you considered doing something like churches used to do with their bulletin boards? They had movable letters on them. It was their...
Yeah. I think that anything is open to what a good solution would be to that. But I do think, and you know, when it first came to me, this thing, well, let's change it to digital, the first thing I think is this bright, brash, hard, cold. Our question is, and we don't know yet because we've only started looking at it, is if money is not such a big object, because we are spending $10,000 a year on this system as it is. And if we were to amortize that, what does $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 get us in terms of something that really is soft and manageable, or even a digital display that is low light that mimics what we've had before? We're open to any kinds of ideas at this point. We are early in that conversation, and we don't have a good alternate to that yet. And we're sort of just reaching out. We're reaching out to you because of the environmental aspect of it, to see what your thoughts are, with the full knowledge that if we do decide to move in that direction, that there needs to be some education within the community of why we're doing it, other than just we want some bright, flashy digital sign.
So I have some
Yeah,
questions.
thank you for coming and for explaining this. I had no idea it cost so much, so really appreciate the input and the chance to talk about it. So, Michelle.
Yeah, the questions I have is, A, why is that paper not recyclable? Why can it not go into the organic waste stream?
Here's what I understand, because before we started talking about it, I wanted to make sure that I got the. So and you'd have to ask really for the specifics of it. It's a heat treated something or other. The way that paper works, reason it's so expensive is because it works on a heat principle, and whatever chemicals or whatever are involved in that are something that cannot go into the recycling stream.
But can it go into the organic digester?
No.
Are you sure? Did you check with South?
Well, I didn't check that far. I know that the city is putting it in landfill, and has been for a while.
So can we ask that we check that with South San Francisco Scavengers, that cannot
Yeah,
go
we
into
can
the
check, but I'm
digester?
pretty largely sure. It's thermal paper, inkjet
Yes, that's right.
printing paper. It's not natural.
Yeah, but thermal paper goes into.
It's not actually paper. I mean, if I understand, sorry, I got here late, but if I understand correctly, that even though it's thin, it's not actually paper. It's not a product of wood pulp and all of that.
Or looks like paper when it gets wet.
Sure,
Yeah, I
and
think
that
it
may be
is-
the case, but it's not actually.
Okay,
it's
so
some
then
sort of plastic.
why aren't we using a paper for the signboard, and then also
That printer, the printing system that we're using is based on this. You call it thermal.
Yeah.
That's the printing system. You can't put regular paper through it.
Okay.
It won't print that. That's not how it operates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there are large size printers that do operate using a regular kind of.
That would then imply getting a new printer.
Yeah. Then the other thing is that we could protect the signboard with, clear plexiglass facing to keep it from like blowing away and
Getting wet.
stuff, huh?
And getting wet.
And getting wet. My concerns are, I really hate electronic billboards. I just hate them. I think that they are a huge distraction to drivers. I have seen. I commuted past two of them on the way to work all the time, and it was just a nightmare. And so if they cycle through the message, or if there's a message cycling that happens, people tend to slow down, or they tend to get distracted, and I think that they are very dangerous. And it's just, and I don't want to open the door for us having an electronic signboard on the freeway in Brisbane that some members of the council have discussed in the past. So my first initial reaction is, let's find an environmental solution that doesn't involve a digital signboard. I just feel like that about it. So I'm one of those people who are not going to be probably in favor of it and would look to other solutions on that. Just to be honest, it's just like the thought of coming in and the nickname for the signboard is the death board, and to come in and see, in memorandum of like your dad's name or something in digital would just be kind of like, okay, it doesn't.
There's like they're not actually digital. I kind of wouldn't like to see a bright LED multicolored thing, like the thing that when you're coming off the Bay Bridge, there's those electronic
Those
billboards.
are just horrible.
But there's sort of a middle ground where I don't know what they're called, but the characters are created by flipping around the little.
E-paper.
No, they're like.
Like European train stations.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
So
actually, I had kind of thought that in the back of my mind.
And-
I wonder how those work, and I wonder,
yeah, so it wouldn't be illuminated,
Right.
but you would still be able to program in what it says, and it wouldn't necessarily be something that would be switching. But there might be a middle ground where you wouldn't have to use that thermal paper, and at the same time you would be able to program in your message, but it wouldn't be illuminated. And
Right.
so I think that
and we're interested in all of
Yeah.
those kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
We're concerned about its being out of step with our environmental values as a community.
Yes.
And it is, and it has been for a long time. So now, and none of us are like, ooh, let's put up neon signs. We don't like that either. So the kind of suggestion that you're talking about, or what else is out there that would.
I've seen them in churches and other,
Yeah.
like things, but they're not, because now LEDs are so cheap and it's so easy to do that.
Right.
That I don't know. I don't know anything about signage, but I'm sure that
Right.
staff might be able to research it, or your staff, or
Right.
whoever. But there might be a middle ground, because my first reaction would be like something that glows at night would be, to me, would be like. But if it was a monochrome thing where you can create letters that have 2-inch pixels that flip, and you can make reasonably good block letters in uppercase and lowercase font.
Yeah, and those
Yeah.
train station things are a little retro. I kind of like them,
Yeah.
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 So I think if we're talking about the same thing, it's,
Yeah.
it's like what they have in European
Yeah,
train
yeah,
stations.
yeah, yeah. No, it exactly. They're like yellow on one side and black on the other, and they flip around, and
Right.
you can, so there might be. I would be open to a discussion about alternatives that are medium tech, not high tech, but something like that.
Karen, I seem to remember we talked about this once in a subcommittee,
Yes, we did.
and we didn't know what to do with it, and we kind of like ran away screaming.
Right, because you wanted to know if the paper was recycled, and we determined that it wasn't.
Yeah, and then we tried to figure out what to do, and we just we didn't come up with a good solution at that time. Couple things. One is that you can put, Sunset Scavenger takes thermal receipts in the green bin. So you may find that this paper could go into the green bin. Personally, I still throw my thermal receipts in the garbage because those chemicals give me the heebie-jeebies, but hey. They do accept thermal paper in the green bin. Two, my second thought is that I'm also, I'd like us to do some kind of environmental analysis of different options when we're trying to decide, because yes, throwing away that much paper is terrible, but having something that large that is eventually going to become e-waste is also not great. So I just I'd like to see us actually take the time to do some analysis when we narrow it down to like maybe a couple of different choices. I think the thing that I might most like to see is something that comes to be almost like, did my mic just go dead? Like a giant Kindle with the e-paper. I don't know if they make those e-paper boards that big, but they can be pretty, they come out pretty nicely.
That's maybe like one step in tech up from the little spinny things, but something that's like an LCD, not LED, but LCD screen.
Yeah, e-paper's not LCD.
Yeah, well,
Different technology.
outside of my domain of understanding.
So we'd
I don't
rather
really-
see a Kindle Paperwhite than a Kindle Fire.
Yeah.
Or an iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thermal paper has BPA in it. That's
It does.
the problem. So if they're
You
taking
can
it in
get
the green bin, they probably
BPA-free.
shouldn't be.
Yeah, you can get BPA-free thermal paper, but I think it's probably an added expense.
Yeah, and then also, you have to consider the whole system.
Yeah.
If it's paper, it's going to have to be printed. And that's, I think, where you wisely are saying, let's do an environmental analysis on the whole life cycle of it. What does it cost to, what is it to change the message on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis? What is the end-of-life options for whatever choice is created? What is the aesthetic, how does it blend in with our sort of environmental and community values? And, see what our options are,
Yeah, and in the meanwhile, for the sign at the ridge, some native plant landscaping around the sign would probably improve its
Well,
aesthetic value.
It has that, but it's just
No, it
too-
doesn't.
It's just too. Yeah, it does. It's all purple. Looked at it today. It's all
Yeah.
wrapped in purple. It's quite nice, but it's just two posts stuck in the ground. It's pretty ratty. I mean, if you look past the message, whereas the one down here is nice. But I'm not suggesting we make any changes to that until, and we're not in a hurry. I think if we do decide to do this as a community, to make a change, I think this is going to take some time, some thoughtful time on our part. Some of the things I'm hearing here are very encouraging in to try to figure out, well, what if we replace it, what's the viability of that, costs and so on. I'm just here to tell you this is a conversation that we're beginning to have, and we know it's a tough one because most people just really love it the way it is and aren't aware of the expense. Expense is significant.
And footprint.
And footprint, which doesn't match the values of our community.
Are there any conversations in our community that aren't difficult?
Point taken. Point taken. So thanks for hearing me out on it. Everything that you've said is stuff that's been echoed with ours, including Michelle, your
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
visceral reaction
like,
to the whole.
Yeah.
We get that, and we're having those. We're mirroring those. Those are the kinds of conversations that we're in already.
And
anything that you guys, as you move forward, if you, want to look at it from an environmental point of view and work with us on first of all, is there a good alternate? And then second of all, how, if we are in agreement, then there's some communication within the community to say, we want to do this. Before you throw your hands up in the air, because that's everybody's first reaction, here's why, and here's what we hope to replace it with, which is not an Amber Alert sign or something like that.
Yeah, because we've
That would
done
be
a
helpful.
few insensitive things, and we've also we protested heavily when Bank of America wanted to put up a red lit monument
Right.
sign, but those flashing yield and stop signs on Lagoon Way and Sierra Point Parkway are just hideous.
Mm-hmm.
Hideous,
I think that
distracting,
yeah.
dangerous.
To your point, I think that the signboards are a really valuable and important communication in our community, and we did change the format from hand printed to what we've got now, with some objection, but people got used to that. If we find a good changeover, it doesn't change its value.
Right.
If it's not something that becomes distracting, which is your
Yes.
the big concern I'm hearing from you.
Big concern.
Kima, you had some interesting thoughts, which I'll take back to our committee, to our commission, to say that's sort of the feedback as we start to try to look at what's really available and what are the costs. So
Even right now, sometimes we put too much on the signboard and it becomes distracting. People slow down to try and read it all.
Mhm.
And it's dangerous.
Yeah.
The message it's a small space. It needs to be clear, concise, and
In-
quickly readable.
we also have already had this conversation in terms of, okay, we have something digital. Well, now we can change the message every 2-3 minutes.
No,
We understand that is not.
acceptable.
That is changing the fundamental way that it works as a communicator to our community. What we want to try to do is just move it away from this unsustainable method that we're doing it now to something that is more sustainable while preserving what it does for our community.
So do you want to move on to the second
Yes.
item? It's interesting you brought this up because I was going to bring this up tonight and not about the paving of Crocker Trail, but I've been out now twice and I'm going out again tomorrow to pick up garbage along the Crocker Trail. My dear friend and Mountain Watch supporter, Lori Graham, has been picking up garbage along Crocker Trail for over a year now. And so I've gone with her a couple times, and I am absolutely freaking appalled at the amount of garbage that accumulates along Crocker Trail, and there is no mitigation for it. Some of the businesses actually, their landscape contractors actually use leaf blowers to blow the garbage out of their parking lots and down into the Crocker Trail and down into the creek. And I have
How are we
four
doing
rows
on that
to
leaf blower
show
ban?
you, that I've been out picking up garbage in the creek. And so, it's nice to think that we're going to spend, $885,000 to pave the trail so we can bring more people who are going to throw garbage. And that's not good. If we're going to do this, we need to have garbage cans. We need to have businesses being responsible to not put garbage there. All the stuff that goes into the creek, which runs along Guadalupe Trail, goes into the bay eventually. And so, we talk about public art and we talk about paving the trail and doing that kind of thing. But what about the remnants of Guadalupe Creek, which feeds into the bay? There should be some serious restoration funding going towards restoring that as a viable water source, cleaning it up, getting rid of the invasives that clog that, and disciplining the various businesses around there, including Shanghai Bakery, who is a big polluter, and all of the trucks that park along South Hill Drive and dump their garbage over the side that rolls down into Guadalupe Creek. There should be some enforcement about those things. And so while I'm excited that we're going to, maybe improve the trail, let's improve some of our habits and some of our responsibility to the environment along the trail. I mean, literally, we're going along the trail, and here's a bench, and here's a bunch of garbage right next to the bench.
If I could just make a comment on two aspects of that. First of all, I think restoring the creek is a really great idea.
It needs to be done.
I think, and when I was talking earlier about what are some features, as we're looking at developing this into a connector to the two geographically separated parts of our community, and coming to you and saying, what are some environmental things that you might be interested? I think that restoring that creek, doing something with that enhances it.
Absolutely.
So your comments on that, and of course where the money's going to come from, that's a whole other thing. That's a long-term thing. But I think that's a good idea to put in the mix. The thing about the trash on the trail, so I walk it frequently, and I don't ever see the people who are walking it abuse it. It's mostly people with their dogs,
or
people like me with I put music in my ears and just go out for a walk to get my exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It is windswept, and I suspect that a lot of the stuff that you see there is being swept along, perhaps from the businesses, as you were talking like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's really abused. The littering is at least nothing that I've seen indicates that it's from the people who are actually using it.
Well, it's
a very
funny
small
that
number
lunch
of people.
trash is right next to the bench.
Well,
Yeah, and
I have photographs I can show you.
I would imagine that it might be the employees that are taking their lunch breaks,
Yes.
rather than the people who are using it
I'm
recreationally.
sure.
But if you have more people using the trail, you build better awareness about the need to keep it clean, and you can have a better voice, a community voice, in shaming the businesses to make sure their employees aren't trashing it. So, I don't think that those things are incompatible or that necessarily.
I'm bringing it up as an item of
Yeah.
focus.
If I could just expand a little bit about Crocker Trail. About 2 years ago, a little over, not quite 2 years ago, it was during the election cycle, and the news was pounding how cities were all beaten up and all that sort of stuff. And I think it was on KQED that I heard an article about cities that are really working. And what they talked about, what was in common in cities that really worked, was they all had a river walk. They called it a river walk. They talked about San Antonio, which does have a really wonderful river walk, and I've walked it. But they went on to say, look, it's not really a river necessarily. It is that place, that recreational place that community goes out and experiences the outdoors, experiences public art, experiences whatever, and meets with each other and associates with each other. You think of the High Line in New York, which when it was you're familiar with the High Line? Yes, okay. I love the High Line. Of course, millions and millions and millions of dollars and much different than what we have here. But somebody had the vision to see that dilapidated stretch as something really quite amazing. Mm-hmm. That's a little high and mighty to think about our little Crocker Trail, but I do see our Crocker Trail, if we really put multiple resources into it, and it became really a pride of community and a place where community members met and talked and shared dog stories and whatever, people would take more pride in it, and maybe the person coming out of the business wouldn't leave their lunch by the side, or maybe there is a trash receptacle and so on. So this is kind of the conversation that we're having, looking down the road about Crocker Trail, that it's a diamond in the rough.
It absolutely is.
And when I walk it, on the one side you look over and here is, industrial park, blah. And then you look over here and you see a field of poppies. And so can we do something with that? I think with this paving money that's come in to pave it, now what else can we add from the environmental side, from the public arts side, from Parks and Rec side, to make it a place where, you and I meet and sit on a bench and have a chat and go on our separate ways, because that's the kind of thing that builds community. And in this community, that's also the kind of thing that stitches together these two geographically separated entities within Brisbane, Central Brisbane and the Ridge.
We have an education subcommittee that hasn't met yet, but one of the things we've talked about in general is providing some sort of, I guess, educational art, I guess you might say. So maybe there's a way to combine education with public art on the trail, so that, for instance, we have a trash problem. I think I've seen it elsewhere in Brisbane. I don't think there's any mistaking it. There's trash on Quarry Road. There's trash on the edges of the roads all over the place. So I would like to see us do maybe some posters or some signage that shows trash and what happens to it, where, the Great Pacific Garbage Gyre and seabirds with their gut stuffed full of plastic and things like that are really compelling, and we get people to talk and maybe be conscious about.
I think all these are good ideas. Also, signage could be, and this is 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line, if we're thinking about, getting critical mass of ideas together on this, but also signage about the history. That's an old train track easement. Signage about the history of Visitation Valley, because you're walking through the valley, and can you still see signs of what that valley was before we occupied it? There's all kinds of ideas there, and it's part of the reason why I'm coming to talk to you about it, because I think that there are places where the environment, awareness of the environment, restoration of the environment would enhance the potential of this diamond in a rough.
Some of the things that are of environmental concern is that whatever paving is used needs to be permeable, so that water can permeate.
Yeah, and I had to look it up, which I did, and it is, because, let's see, wait, let me see. It is called, I had to write it down.
Decomposed granite, right?
Yeah, decomposed granite surfacing. Stabilized decomposed granite surfacing. So I looked it up.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, and that
and as long as they're not putting any membrane underneath it, it should be fine from that regard.
Yeah, and then also making sure that, weed abatement, any kind of weed abatement along the sides of the trails is not using any, and the businesses in that area are not using
Chemicals,
Roundup or any glyphosates or anything that impacts the frogs. I mean, one of the things that was really hard was that Mountain Watch put and Earth Care put a tremendous amount of work into the frog habitat along Cypress Lane, and then the business was allowed to,
go at it with a backhoe.
Pretty much.
Well, I'm sure as it currently is, the businesses aren't thinking twice about that. But if it
they thought twice about it, because
if it became something that was valuable to the community and valuable to their workers, that over time might change. I didn't want to take up all of your time and all of your meeting. And Sisto is waiting for me at home to fix some dinner. But if you had more comments and questions, yes.
One thing while you're here, I wonder if PB&R would be interested in this committee would be interested in forming a joint subcommittee to discuss possibilities, or are we at that point yet?
For Crocker Trail? I kind of like the idea. I'll bring it up at our next meeting. I mean, I'll report back,
Okay.
that I had this conversation. I'll say, here's some things that came out of that. Here's some of their concerns. The sign board, we're sharing the same
Yeah.
concerns.
And we also make a point to let us know when your committee is going to discuss Day in the Park.
Yeah, and I don't know when that day in the park is in June. They're probably going to start about April.
So please let us know when it's on your agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some feedback on the way the booths were, and I think the jury's out on sort of the reconfiguration of having the booths, and I don't know, when the booths were next to each other, as opposed to being isolated with a whole bunch of sun and pavement in between them. Like the 2 years ago, I think was better than last year, but let's leave that conversation. I did have.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump into that debate,
Yeah.
and I'm not on that subcommittee,
Okay.
so I hear what they're going to do then after the
Yeah.
fact. But we can let you know when that subcommittee is going to happen.
I did want to make a quick point on the Crocker Trail, because you and I had an opportunity to meet about the Shenki stuff, and I think you remember one of the comments was you wanted to know whether there's environmental things or ecology related things that some of that resource could be used, and I was like, we just got to get in front of OSEC, because I'm sure Michelle will have ideas, and Guadalupe Creek is the perfect example, and if we could rehabilitate that as part of a expansion or rehabilitation of the Crocker Trail as a whole. I love the public art idea, but I'm not sure how open space and ecology related that is. But
No,
Guadalupe
and
Creek.
I'm not here to talk to you about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
public art aspect of it, but there is this idea like Michelle had, and I think the more of those things that we can bring to bear, the more we have. They start. There's added value.
Yeah.
The sum is greater than the parts.
Yeah.
There's added value if we can come up with
And the
various aspects, so that when you decide to go out there with your son or daughter or grandchild, you're not just going out there on the park. You're going out to see the creek. You're going out to see
the meadow.
The
So
meadow.
I think your points about the meadow are really well taken too, because I'd love to see that not be a private business that deals with dogs and has trucks. I'd love to see that be a grassland with the original native wildflowers growing there as some little teeny strip of what that meadow used to look like before there was a Crocker Park.
And if I could just say, and I'll say one last little bit, and then unless there's a pressing question, I'm going to let you get on with your meeting. That's exactly right. And about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Sisto and I made a funny little video that you might have seen called Zombie Trail. And it blew up on Facebook, where we pretended we were getting attacked by zombies. And it was in that meadow that we did that, with the frogs chirping menacingly in the background. But it was really a beautiful space. It's the one space that you go into where, because there are trees on one side and a large hill on the other side, you see nothing of
Industrial Park.
Yeah.
industry
Yeah.
or anything like that. And it is a little oasis where you can imagine
Yeah.
what Visitation Valley was like before it was occupied. So
I've done a little exploration of trespassing. I'm there occasionally, so yeah, I'm familiar with it, and I think that would be great if it's not in the purview of Parks and Rec to question why there's a business there. Maybe it is something that OSEC could.
It is city property.
Bring up. Yeah.
Yes, it is city property.
Yeah, so maybe it's something that OSEC could bring up and say, this is a candidate for rehabilitation, and let's not renew the lease. Or let's help them relocate to somewhere where they can do their good work somewhere else.
Yeah, and there may be time. I mean, the funding for the paving, I don't think gets into the city coffers for another year yet. It's going through a process. We're not going to see anything happen out there within a year or even 2 years, but it does give us some time to think about other kinds of things we could do that would give added value to.
I would like to see more trash containers along the trail before then.
Well, we could start there, couldn't we?
Or
Yep,
go in
good.
concurrently.
Yeah. Anything else?
I just want to say, Karen, I very much had wanted to go to the meeting on Sunday, but I had an obligation I could not get out of. Will there be minutes from that? Do you know? I'm sure it wasn't recorded.
What meeting?
The council goal setting?
Goal setting.
Yes.
Oh.
I don't know.
Okay. I would like to find that out.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Thank
Kevin.
you.
Okay.
Pleasure, as always.
Okay, bye-bye.
Because you had said the city was going to committed to supplying how much for the Crocker Trail?
115,
115,000 now.
Take it up to $1 million, right?
yes.
And that was out of the Shenki funds or separate?
No.
Separate.
General fund, I think.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think Crocker Trail, you know, it is, like Kevin said, it's a diamond in the rough. It could be a community resource more than it is now.
In the meanwhile, though, can we see about policing the garbage on South Hill Drive and the trucks that, I mean, the trucks in the park or people who park there, and also the littering up at Shanghai Bakery?
And the littering down by the train tunnel
Yeah,
underneath Bayshore.
yeah.
Yeah, I know where the parking was allowed on South Hill, that there was an agreement that they maintain, if there's trash, that they go out and pick up the trash. And
Yeah, well, their idea of picking up the trash is letting it go down.
Yeah, blowing it.
Getting the
Trail.
leaf blower and
Yeah.
pushing it along.
probably, I know sometimes they have, but probably not enough,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should
We
be.
had talked before about adopt an area, like a public, if it's somewhere that people walk regularly, that we could supply. I mean, obviously we need some cans in some places, but pickers and bags.
Yeah, well, that would be good because we've been supplying our own, and I actually called the first time I went out to pick up trash with Lori. We had 2 huge, heavy garbage bags full because I brought an industrial-sized garbage bag, and I called to have it picked up because instead of trying to put it in her car, carry it, or whatever. And it didn't get picked up for over a week until I called again, and so that was distressing, So, when I'm like, we picked it up. Can you come and pick it up? Oh, we put in a work order. A week later, where it's all strewn out again. So, I mean, we need to have ways to be able to do that if you want people to adopt cleaning up an area.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a program in place, there'd be more, that'd be an activity or a job that maintenance crews would do. But, I mean, to some degree they're, all right, but they're scheduled. They're not just hanging by the phone for that one phone call to pick up that one bag. But if we had a plan, the other thing is if you're going to go out and pick up trash, let them know ahead so they can schedule and know that
Yeah.
they're there. But if we did have a program like that and they knew that once a week they were going to go, people were going to call in the areas where they had bags, that could be something that could be set.
Well, I think the city also ought to reach out to the people who work, the businesses in Crocker Park and say, we have a littering ordinance. And, I'm sorry to be so grumpy tonight about it, but after the lagoon cleanup before the last lagoon cleanup, I requested that we have no littering signs and, illegal to dump signs when you get off the freeway out there. And nothing has happened with that at all, and it's just a mess again. I didn't even participate last year because I was doing something else, but I didn't feel bad about it because I've thoroughly cleaned that area twice now and picked up other people's garbage, and we don't do anything about posting that it's illegal to litter there. We don't put a garbage can there. We don't do anything, and yet it's a regular place where people get off the freeway and stop and talk on their phone and dump their garbage out.
We actually have talked about signage various times before. Maybe we should discuss it again. I'm upset too. I'm especially upset about Quarry Road because there's a lot of trash
Yep.
accumulating out there. So maybe we should agendize that for a future meeting. It's 20 after 7 and we've gotten through exactly one item on our agenda. We have the rest of the agenda to go, and I would like to get on with that, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the first thing we need to do is adopt the agenda, since we now have a quorum and we're actually having a meeting. So is everybody okay with the agenda? And if so, could I have a motion to
I
approve?
move to approve.
There is, okay. I said.
Hold on. Did you want to add something?
Well, there is something
Change
that I wanted to discuss, but it's not on the agenda. But maybe I can do it during, I don't know, chair and committee matters.
Okay.
We have a second?
Yes, I seconded that.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear.
Okay. All in favor of adopting
Aye.
the agenda? Yes?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I printed out a paper and I brought it with me, and
Is this it? Did I
I
steal
think you might have stolen it, Glenn.
Well, just scoot over, Barbara. There's the agenda.
Okay, I may not be able to see it. Okay, so yeah, but you need it because you're doing the.
All right, so the agenda has been adopted. We've had oral communications. How about the minutes? Has everybody had a chance to look them over? And
I had one question on the minutes.
I did not, so I will abstain today.
When Michael Rausch did his presentation, and then we talked about the recommendation, and in the minutes it says that we recommended a unanimous vote by the city council to change the status of the lots, and I thought that we had gone with the supermajority.
My memory is that we went with unanimous at the end, but it was not a real solid. I mean, I think there was.
I think in the fallback would be,
Yeah.
would take a supermajority.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
we went back and forth several
We did.
times. and
Yeah,
I
it's just
think-
there's nowhere that says supermajority in the minutes, so I just wanted to make sure that.
Oh, no, it says at the second to last sentence, it says as well as additional alternatives of supermajority or unanimous
Oh, wait.
council votes.
Sorry, this is so tiny I can't read it now. But,
Yeah, I'm okay with
Okay.
the minutes.
all right. Oh, right. Alternatives of supermajority or unanimous. Okay. All right.
So there's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well,
Aye.
oh, I'm abstaining.
All right, so the minutes are approved. Next order of business is the invasive plants letter to nurseries, which after last meeting it was agreed that Bob would write it, and then I ended up going back to the nursery I'd visited before and getting mad, so I wrote one. So this is probably an amalgam. Is that right?
Yeah, I have a problem with the second sentence. It's not an actually correctly written sentence. The City of Brisbane's Open Space and Ecology Committee, which advises and makes recommendations to the City Council and educates the public about environmental affairs, comma, with special emphasis on issues affecting our locale.
It's an incomplete sentence.
It's not, yeah. So that needs to be rewritten.
Yes, we could correct that very easily with just removing which.
Yeah. Except you're just describing the committee. So it needs a little bit more work than just removing the word which. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it needs a verb.
Yeah, it needs a verb
Well,
or a
no, advises would be the word. There's two verbs, advises and makes.
advises.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you take
And
out which.
educates.
But, okay.
But still just sort of hanging there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we thought the
Conjunction,
point was,
junction. What's
here's who we
your
are, and
function?
here's why we're trying to tell you what plans to sell. This is what we do as a committee.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
Yeah, well then just
Okay.
expand on the sentence a little bit there and say why we're butting in. Sounds good.
I also think that on these letters, besides mentioning the two offenders that you saw at that nursery,
Mm-hmm.
we should, I know we give them the brochure, but we should also, I guess, mention some of the other big
Well,
offenders in the area.
The next sentence just says that I guess it was in my letter, but it's not in this one.
Right.
We hope you'll act on our request. It is in the last paragraph. We hope you will act on our request and review the enclosed brochure as well as the website of the California Invasive Plant Council before making future purchases,
Well,
in order to ensure that neither you nor your customers inadvertently worsen this problem.
right. But are we going to go visit every nursery? Because you were able to visit that one, but do we have a generic letter for nurseries we're not visiting?
So that was something that we were going to discuss this evening. So on the next slide, I have a list of nurseries that Bob put together. And the question before you is whether we want to assign scouts to go out to all of the nurseries, or we want to just remove some of the specifics to your nursery has these two offending plants, which would make this letter more generic, and just send the letter, a generic version, to all of the ones that we have on the list. So that's our discussion this
Why
evening.
don't we deal with this then and then move on to that item?
Well, I have it all as the same item. It's the
Oh,
next
it's just-
slide.
Yeah. So my
Okay.
thought is that we should send the generic letter to all of the nurseries, and then as we observe nurseries that have specific plants, we send again another letter listing the specific plants.
I actually disagree. I think it's a lot more powerful if you can tell them that we saw you and these are the
Well,
these are
that's
the
what
problems.
I mean. Is like, first of all, send out the generic letter right now while everybody's getting their spring plants, because we don't have time to go around right now to all of these different nurseries and send scouts out, etc. So send the generic letter, and then let's go ahead and scout them out, and then send the specific.
Well, I think to Glenn's point, doing that scouting and sending it out. I mean, how about we take a look at the list of nurseries, because I have
How
no
big
idea
is
how
it?
many are on it.
There's
Oh, that's
20.
a lot. Yeah.
There are probably a few of these that we could discuss removing. Bob noted letter to be sent column, because I think he and I were both recognizing that we may not need to send a letter to Golden Gate Orchids, or
Mission
we
Blue
may
Nursery.
go as far as, right, Mission Blue Nursery. They're on the list. Letter to be sent.
Yeah, Bay
No,
natives.
Not necessary.
Bay
Bay
natives might not, yeah.
do we want to go as far as Millbrae, the last one down there on the list,
Yes.
Orchard Supply Hardware? Where is our boundary line? So
Definitely Orchard Supply Hardware, because people from Brisbane shop there. And
But isn't there one
One in
closer than Millbrae?
no,
So I just was doing a circle, kind of coming up with ones, and I didn't know what you guys thought an adequate radius was, so I just kind of stopped as an example of, I think I touched Millbrae and didn't get all of them, didn't go down
Okay,
to the
yeah.
Burlingame. I don't live here, I don't know where people go, in our neck of the woods,
Yeah.
everyone goes to Half Moon Bay, because there's a zillion nurseries, but I don't know if people from Brisbane go that far,
yeah, I go to Half Moon Bay Nursery.
but I don't know how-
Occasionally
Well,
we do.
All right,
how
so
many
maybe
letters are-
the better way to do it is say who's willing to scout any of these, and then we send a generic letter to the ones that aren't going to get scouted. And we'll say if there's any volunteers to scout any of these, then let's hold off and let's get a commitment on when they'll be scouted. We'll send those. Let's maybe in the next month. Or in the next couple of weeks, whatever, and then the ones that we know we're not going to get to, because not that I'm going to be on the committee, but I can't see the committee going to all of these, and then let's go to your point, Michelle. Let's just get that generic letter out.
Let's get the generic out letter as soon as we can to everybody who's applicable, except like Mission Blue Nursery and Golden
Yeah.
Orchids. And
Mm-hmm.
Or
Native.
unless there's scouts that want to say, yeah, I'll get there next week,
Yeah,
and then we'll hold off. But if somebody, if nobody's going to say I'm going to get there next week or in the next 2 weeks, then let's just send the generic letter now.
and you're right, Glenn. It's definitely more impactful to actually list the species that were observed there, but we might not observe the species because they might arrive a week after we.
Right.
So, get the generic letter out to everybody. That's like covering our first base. Then delve into the closest ones that are serious offenders like Lowe's.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to suggest in connection with this problem is that we could see if we could get somebody from the Invasive Plants Council or the California Native Plant Society to come and talk to us about, what are they doing about this problem. I actually wrote to the Native Plant Society and said, have you guys considered supporting a law at the state level preventing nurseries from selling some of these things? And I got a total non-answer back, but I would really like to talk to some of the people that specialize in this and see if we could actually nudge them to be a little bit more aggressive, because this is just hopeless. Because you're right, the nursery that I went to had Vinca and Cotoneaster the last time I went, but the following week they could have gotten Scabiosa and I wouldn't know it because I don't go there every week.
Right.
So this is just, it's really a horrible problem, and we're losing just huge areas of California to pampas grass and and French broom and oxalis and Scabiosa, and there's not going to be anything else.
What about in lieu of scouting or in before scouting, just calling up, say, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? Act like a customer. say, except that you're not planning on buying, you're planning on adding it to the letter.
Yeah, but if you
I think
said
they
that,
won't
they
know.
might go out and buy
Yeah.
it because they think it's
They wouldn't,
popular.
yeah, the person answering the phone wouldn't know.
A lot of times their staff doesn't know.
Yeah.
They hire people who, some of their people are great, but a lot of them don't know an invasive species from.
No, but if you asked, yeah, right, if you called up and said, do you have cotoneaster, the person answering the phone may not even know what cotoneaster is.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I think Glenn is absolutely right. This really should be dealt with at the state level. My opinion is that we should just make a generic letter and send it. We should go over really quick, even in subcommittee or in email, which of these are practical and which of these we can skip, possibly add to them based on personal knowledge. Send out the generic letter because we're not going to get to it in time. And if we wait for the state to do something, we're going to be waiting a really long time. So let's just do the generic letter and send it, and we can send the specific one to Flowercraft because we happen to have caught them. And I think that is the most direct path to action.
If we sent the generic letter, would we also want to include, like on a second page, a list of all the different
Yeah, I mean, I
plants?
think
That way,
flyer.
because the person receiving the letter may not know.
And the invasive
Oh.
species brochure, like you
Yeah.
said.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote a generic letter that's not in here. This is Glenn's letter that she wrote that Adrian bolded some of the things. Mine was kind of short and sweet. We spent a lot of time and money trying to get these off the mountain. Please look through your inventory. And so I will send that back out to the subcommittee, and I will add a few more nurseries to the list. And then that was also my idea. Just pop the brochure in with the letter that also lists them. And then
And can we ask them to maybe post the brochure by the register
um,
as an educational?
That's probably one too many things.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
I don't know if you look at Pacific Nursery's webpage. They have their advertised plants, and I didn't see any invasive, so I don't know if it's as hopeless with the nurseries. I think it might make an impact, especially with the brochure. Then they could pin it by the wall or flip through it or leave it on the break room table.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'll do that. I'll add a few more nurseries to the list and send out the draft generic letter I have. And
Yeah, and send out the list of nurseries.
right,
too.
and I'll add them, and
Okay.
we'll send that off to the subcommittee. I can get to that in the next few days.
Great.
Thanks, Bob. We all in agreement?
Yep.
Wait, just one more thing on that. I do think it's a good idea if we also send a letter to the state asking.
Yes.
To the state. Who
Who controls, there are agricultural plants that aren't allowed to come into California. And we should be able to tap into that for invasive.
No,
as well.
that's customs. That's a different thing. I think at the state level, the thing to do would be to talk to legislators about a bill that would prevent the sale of these plants to nurseries in California. And that's what I was asking the California Native Plant Society if they'd consider doing anything like that. And I got a complete non-answer. I'm still interested in having somebody come to the committee if we could get somebody to talk to us about it. And, I'd like to ask them, well, have you tried?
Mm-hmm.
If not, why not? Can we help? I think this is one of the worst environmental problems affecting our region, and I think we need to be doing more about it. And just going back to what we were talking about, I'm willing to go to 4 of these places in the next month. I mean, there aren't that many on this list. Can we not do that?
I think we should do both, Glenn. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, I think that we should write to our senators then, send a letter to the senators that represent us in the state legislature and ask them to write and pass the bill.
What about maybe reaching out to Dave Canepa or somebody as our district supervisor?
He's our district supervisor. We should be reaching out to Jerry Hill, who's our state
Well, yeah, why
senator or whoever.
do both?
Yeah.
Because maybe there's maybe at the San Mateo County level.
Well, let's just go straight to the state. I think we've bothered Canepa enough with things.
Yeah, well, at least he understands the issue.
I just checked the invasive plants book out of the library again, and they were, I flipped through it, and the book said that most of these invasive plants are a problem throughout the whole state. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try to deal with it at a level that's more
But,
local.
Yeah, fair
but
enough.
somebody has to introduce the state bill, and we know
Oh,
our
sure.
state legislators, and San Mateo County is severely impacted by this with the pampas grass along the coast, and you know, the San Mateo County is like ground zero for a lot of this shit stuff.
Is it possible for us as a
Is that a technical term?
Is it possible for us as a committee to write a letter to, say, Jerry Hill saying, does that get us into political territory that we can't go into?
Probably we'd have to get council okay to do that. I don't know.
Let's do it
Doesn't come
then.
from-
You know, I mean, it's an issue. It's
Yeah, I'd like to ask the council.
We've got our liaisons coming.
Right. That'd be the perfect time.
That's next month, right?
No,
We
not
are
till
trying to
April.
schedule them depending on what
Okay.
their schedule ends up being. So we're hoping next month, yeah.
Let's agendize that for when they do come. Ask them how they would feel about that, because I think nursery business is big business, and they're not going to like this. So the more sort of pressure we can put out, the better off we will be. But somebody should start. Why not us?
Yeah. Because we have a stake and we have an example that's right here that's very important. And
Yeah, I saw Scabiosa at Lowe's last year.
you saw Scabiosa what? At Lowe's.
Lowe's.
Yeah.
They're on the list.
Yeah. Oh, Lowe's is notorious. They sold
Yeah.
broom. You know?
Lowe's is particularly bad.
Yeah, they don't give it. Rat's ass. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next is discussion of habitat restoration and planting days.
So let me just give a brief introduction of what I was hoping to discuss. We have a habitat restoration subcommittee meeting next week on March 8th, I believe we ended up going with. So we will have that meeting with the Parks and Rec, and we'll be discussing the dates, two of which are already set for Earth Day and Coastal Cleanup Day. We'll be discussing the date of the June event, as well as the locations, t-shirts, all of those kind of logistics. So what I was hoping to kind of discuss was whether folks felt the planting day that we had earlier this month was successful, if we wanted to continue to do planting events, work them into the schedule as an additional event in the calendar on an annual basis, or if we wanted to be considering doing a planting event instead of a cleanup event at one of those other times. So just wanted to kind of talk about some of how that event that we had earlier this month, which was very successful. We had 38 volunteers there, how we want to see that move forward, and then just if there are any other comments about things that we should bring to that subcommittee meeting next week.
And let me jump in with, we had some resources to buy the plants this year from the Firth Canyon Rescue. We used those funds. And then we anticipated a lot of rain, and luckily we're about to get some now, but there's probably going to be some watering that's going to happen that Bob said he would go up and keep those plants watered for a time. But that is in a drought year. Those plants wouldn't survive without water if we continued to do this year after year. So we wanted to just think about, there's some resources required, and if we can wait and talk about it later on in the year and see how.
I want to give a shout out to Carrie and Camille, who said they've been watering them as at least what they can reach over their fence.
Mm-hmm.
We have great citizens in this community. So.
Yeah, in Carmel, yeah. So I was at the planting event, and I thought it was really fun. It was really well received, and it was great. I think that the cleanup and habitat restoration days that we do, where we actually go out and attack invasives in an intense way in specific areas, has a really beneficial long-term value.
Yeah.
And if we had not done that so many times with Costañas Canyon, a planting day would have been completely irrelevant.
Yeah. I think you're right, Michelle. I think our focus needs to stay on cleanup. But if we get into a position where we can do another planting day, that's great because I think it sort of rewards our community for
Oh,
their
yeah,
effort.
it's a huge reward.
It's sort of like allows us to feel that they're actually bringing something to fruition. And so I think it'll just be if we could do one every couple of years, maybe.
Well,
when money comes up.
tentatively, I mean, we could tentatively do it every year depending on conditions and location. So it could be the one that is a sort of like we decide in the fall. Do we think we're going to, A, long range plans, have a good winter? B, do we have a place where we're going to do it? But then keep consistent with our Earth Day, our summer one, and the lagoon cleanup.
Okay, and if that's what the committee is recommending, then I guess we would ask for the money in the budget, and it's one of those things, you know, if you don't spend the money, it's still, it may not be ours, but it goes back to the general fund and is
Right.
funds other projects.
Yeah.
Okay, is that,
Sounds great to me.
Mm-hmm.
Does staff feel like they have enough direction? I mean, this is going to be discussed further in subcommittee, so.
yeah, but that's what we're looking for on the,
I'm sorry. What was that?
Sorry. Does staff know what they're doing? No. I was just saying, does staff feel like they've had an adequate amount of direction from the committee at large to continue with subcommittee?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think we'll have Park and Rec commissioners and staff there as well who have done this several times. So I have other people leading the way.
I will say one thing that was really, I loved getting gloves. I have lots of T-shirts, and the gloves
Were there gloves?
were, yeah.
I didn't get one. I was
Well-
looking forward to that.
Well, come next time. Maybe you'll get a
Yeah.
pair. And so I thought that was really a nice change from getting a T-shirt, was getting a pair of gloves, and I've already used them 2 more times to pick up garbage. So I really liked getting gloves, and and I know that you can have the sponsor gloves as well and have their logo on them or whatever. So I just would think that
Yeah,
would
let's
really,
follow up on that because I know sponsors tend to like to do things that they can print their logos on, and I don't know what the glove printing market is like.
It's easy to get that done.
It is? Okay.
Oh, tons of AAA gloves that were, same kind
Okay.
of gloves. And I just thought, I know everybody kind of loves their little T-shirt thing, and that might be good for lagoon cleanup, but I think the idea of passing out gloves was just awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we could still do one T-shirt a year, but really, how many T-shirts do you need?
So I don't know how other people feel about that.
I'm cool with it.
I think gloves are great.
yeah, I think the subcommittee can finalize that. You're able to go to the,
Oh yeah, I'll be there. Hopefully, I'm planning on it.
Are we ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay, Citizens Climate Lobby, carbon fee and dividend.
Did you all get a chance to check out the video in the Citizens Climate Lobby website?
Mm-hmm.
Should we attempt to watch the video now? It's about 2 minutes, or do people feel like you have enough background to discuss this?
I'd
everybody
like
watch
to- I didn't get a chance to watch it. I'd love
Maybe we should. I know Citizens Climate Lobby pretty well, but let's show it to the TV audience and the rest of the committee.
Yeah.
Will the TV audience
Are
get
you-
to see it?
Yeah? Okay. Let's go ahead here. Oh, we don't have sound, do you? That's a problem. I don't know where the volume controls are. It might help if we weren't muted. Let's try that again.
We must lower our fossil fuel use. Fossil fuels become less desirable. Cleaner sources of energy become more competitive. The dividend creates millions of jobs. Carbon emissions go down, reduced air pollution saves tens of thousands of lives, and climate change is brought under control. We can make this happen, but enacting a carbon fee and dividend isn't in our hands, it's in theirs. How do we sway them? What can we do? We can use our voices to express political will and demand action. We must help our elected leaders work together. It's on us to tell them what we want as a group. Because when voices call out together, their impact multiplies. Government can respond to the will of the people, provided we tell the government what we want. And what we want is a livable world. This is what Citizens Climate Lobby works for. To empower citizens to connect with and influence their members of Congress. To spread the idea that each one of us can address climate change. Bring your voice to citizensclimatelobby.org.
So I'm pretty familiar with Citizens Climate Lobby. Would the committee like me to just give the elevator version of what they want to do?
Yeah.
Sure. Can I just briefly first mention how this came up?
Yeah, I was curious about that.
So I was on the RICAPS call, that's the sustainability group for the county, last month, and they had a presentation about this from Gary White, who is the San Mateo County chapter lead for Citizens Climate Lobby, and they have been encouraging local governments to pass a resolution supporting their proposal. San Carlos recently passed one in January. The county had done so in October, and there's also been a state resolution back in 2016 urging a carbon tax and dividend. So there was a discussion about that at the RICAPS meeting, and I thought it might be something that OSEC would be interested in discussing, whether we should make a recommendation for Brisbane to do something similar.
I'm all for it. I mean,
too.
I'm familiar with carbon tax and dividend plans, not not with the Citizens Climate Lobby, but I think it's great if we get our municipality to add its voice to the growing chorus for climate tax.
Let's hope it's growing. Yeah.
I agree.
Barbara?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I
Yeah.
move that we add our voice to their voices.
I second.
So basically, what we would be doing is asking the council to support it. Is that the idea?
Well, what did San Carlos do? What was their action?
They passed a council resolution encouraging the federal government to adopt a proposal. Basically, they said, we support Citizens Climate Lobby's proposal. Their resolution did not have the full text of, actually I have this here if you can even read that. This is what the Citizens Climate Lobby text is. The San Carlos resolution was much more generic, just saying we support this proposal and hope the federal government will take action on it.
Could we look at the San Carlos resolution maybe in the CAP subcommittee and just see if we want to tweak any of the language and bring it back to the full committee for recommendation to council?
Yeah.
Is that a
Yeah,
good path?
so.
Fine with me.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Okay, subcommittee reports, chair and committee member matters.
Well, on open space, I don't have anything to, on the acres, anything to add at this time. I don't have a committee.
So climate action plan subcommittee, Barbara, do you want to report on that?
No, I'll let you do it, Glenn.
Both want to do it. So we met let's see, what was it? 3 weeks ago. We're still working on the building energy disclosure ordinance. I think we've said before that we've kind of switched gears a little bit. We're working on, we're thinking about applying our ordinance to commercial buildings first before residential buildings, simply because commercial buildings produce a lot more of the emissions. They have a lot more money, and we think it would be easier and also have more impact to start with commercial buildings. So that's the direction that we're currently pursuing. And we spent most of the meeting looking at similar resolutions that have been passed in various cities around the country, and subcommittee members were assigned to do in-depth research on selected cities to bring back to the next meeting. And that's mostly what we did, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think that I had asked Adrian to follow up on electric car ownership rates in Brisbane. That ended up being a dead end.
I actually have new information about that.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm going to fall out of my chair. Wait.
Yeah.
And then, well, of course, we had the ribbon cutting for the EV
Right.
thing. But that was kind of came out of the CAP subcommittee, but we didn't talk about it. We just went and cut the ribbon.
So what did you find out?
You guys are stealing all my thunder from my staff updates. The San Mateo County Energy Watch has data from the county's open data portal on their website, and they have data on registered vehicles by city, and it shows that there are 47 registered electric vehicles, and I believe it was 287 hybrids registered in the city of Brisbane.
Wow.
4,299 gas vehicles registered. So I believe that puts us at about 1% electric vehicles and something around 6% or so hybrids.
And one car for every citizen in the town, including the kids.
We're gonna have to
Any
burn 'em.
idea how that compares
Okay.
to other parts of the state or other cities in the county even?
You know, I didn't look that far into it because I just learned about this yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. I did, before the ribbon cutting, try to find this through a different data source. I was not aware that the county had this information. We had another source we were looking into, and they did not have any information for Brisbane, but they had some of the highest performing cities, and I want to say San Jose, Sunnyvale, a number of cities in the South Bay, Palo Alto, Menlo Park, I believe, had some very high adoption rates. I want to say the top ones were around 10%, but I don't think that, I think that's
Wow.
apples and oranges, because what I saw yesterday is registered vehicles, and I believe that may be vehicle sales over a certain time period. So, you know, you're talking about new vehicles being purchased at a rate of 10% perhaps, or somewhere thereabouts, being electric vehicles versus all of the vehicles in the community. So I can dig into those sources a little bit further if folks are really interested in seeing more, or I can just share the data source with you and you can
Sure.
peruse that yourself.
It's interesting. There are probably other things you have to do that are more important, but
Yeah.
I wonder how much it correlates with HOV lanes.
Yeah.
You know, that where you're allowed to go in the HOV lane.
1% is pretty good. I think we get some bragging rights from that.
Yeah. I knew that figure, and I thought I would Google it really fast, and Google's just sending me all kinds of different random pages.
Google is doing that lately. So the Education and Outreach Committee has not yet met, although we should do that as soon as Nathan gets back.
You skipped events.
Oh, sorry. I skipped events.
But we already talked about that planting day and the habitat restoration day, and we've actually talked about day in the park, so we're good.
Okay. Invasive species ordinance.
We
That's
have-
kind of interesting because the discussion we had earlier about invasive plants the sense of the committee was, let's go to the top and go to the state. So maybe we should put that on hold for a while. What do people think?
Put on hold the invasive species ordinance.
For the city, yeah.
I don't know. I think that we should move forward with it and
Yeah?
go to the state. Why not?
Just because it's going to be really hard to enforce it.
Yeah, but it's putting a stake in the ground and saying we believe that this is right.
Great, go for it.
But I mean, I think that let's wait and see also what the new liaisons think about that as well.
So I have started researching the invasive species a little bit, and reminds me of the building ordinance. It's kind of a lot to take in, and a lot of it's agricultural related, and so I haven't had time to come back with an official report of this is the way forward. A lot of the few ordinances I've seen is kind of related to noxious weeds and expanding those ordinances, and so I'm going to keep researching that. But yeah, there's a lot of information, mostly agricultural related, when you get into invasive species.
Sure, because it has to do with money.
Yeah.
You know.
So I've started a little bit, and then I'll email out to a subcommittee if I get to a point where it's I've got something real definitive, like a good model.
Okay.
Some parts of Florida have ordinances that apparently even require homeowners to remove some species if they're found on their property, and that's kind of what I was hoping we might do. Just order people to get rid of their cotoneasters and pampas grass. I'm not sure which counties those would be, but Florida has invasive species problems that are similar to ours, so that might be a good place to look.
Thanks. Yeah, I've seen some stuff from Florida. So,
Okay.
and there's it's kind of scattered. The different some from like Wisconsin, and so yeah, I'll keep pouring through it.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
So
So,
festival tree replacement, we haven't worked on that yet.
okay.
Again, I mean, we worked on it before, but we haven't worked on it lately.
So are you in touch with Parks and Rec about it, or
No.
has it not gone that far yet?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one for me, because we there's still work to decide if we want to recommend a certain type of tree, and then I'm supposed to do a matrix of the pros and cons of a couple of locations that we talked about. Adrian and I were just at our countywide working group in Millbrae, and their Christmas tree in front of their city hall is a beautiful redwood tree. I know the committee wasn't a fan of using a redwood, but they said they've kind of shaped it, and they love it.
I'm not against a redwood if it'll deal with the wet there.
Yeah. I love redwoods. If it would grow in our park, yeah.
And I did ask, so it was their park superintendent, I think it was showing us their rain garden that they'd installed. And I asked, what are you going to do when it gets a lot taller? And he said, well, we're shaping it at the top. We're kind of making it stay Christmas-like and accessible from a boom truck.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's true.
We just plant
There's
one
only
every-
so far they're going to be able to hold that thing back.
Maybe we can plant one every 15 years. And
Yeah, they grow really fast.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, look at the library ones. Those were not there in 1985.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, Littman Science Fair judging.
You know what? I found out that they were having the competition, the thing the day before.
Oh,
It was like I found out that the thing was happening the day before the awards, and I'm like, well, that bridge just went over the water, or the ship sailed. I guess me not having a Littman student anymore, I was not in touch with the whole process, and somehow January just came up and swamped over me like a wave, and it did not happen, and that's my fault.
That's okay. I mean, I'm sure they did a good job with it, and yeah, next year.
Is it always in January, February?
January, yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember what day in January, otherwise I might have been a little more awake.
okay. PCA grant application, and that's Megan, and she's not here.
I would note that I have checked their website a couple of times. I'm on a mailing list to be notified when there is any new information about the PCA grants. So there has not been anything updated so far as I have seen.
Okay, thank you.
Is this where a committee member can bring up a matter? Yes. Yes? Okay. So there's something that has been really bothering me a lot, and I want to bring it up, and I want us to stop the practice of doing it. So I don't know where else to bring it up. But at the community pool, when you buy a pass, they laminate it.
You've said this before.
They don't have to laminate it. When you laminate it, it becomes a piece of plastic waste. If you just keep it as a piece of paper, and they're willing to keep it on file there too if you're worried about getting it wet, then it's just a piece of recyclable or organic waste. And I think that the city should remove the laminator from the pool and not laminate the passes. I'm sorry. I really think
Take it away from them.
just take it away from them. And I've asked the people that work there, please don't offer to laminate anybody's passes. Make them ask for it. Make them pay for it. Don't laminate. But I really think that it is contrary to our goals of sustainability. And I know it's a small thing, but every pebble in the pond makes a difference. So stop laminating the passes.
Have we done any kind of an assessment of what the impact is relative to the other stuff that we're?
Besides annoying me?
Well, yeah.
No.
No. I mean,
No,
you know,
I
just
mean-
because I'd love to, and I'm just being devil's advocate here, but I'd love to handle every single problem. But there's a lot of bigger fishes to fry.
I know.
Yeah, but this one, just taking away their laminator should be a pretty easy solution.
Yeah. Just take it away,
We're
Karen.
getting towards the end of it. You know, there's how big of a rock do you want to push up a hill? I mean, I swim, and I always have to say, don't laminate my card. You have to kind of tell them. So have you talked to Jeff directly?
Sort of. Mostly I've talked to the kids the people that work there. But
Go straight to
can we just make a
top.
recommendation that they
We can, but I think if you talk to Jeff, that would probably be more effective. And they do in-service training before the summer when they get the new lifeguards, and they can teach them all that. Because if a few people want their cards laminated, I think we should let them. But you're right, they should ask for it, or they should,
Or it should be $1.
or you could charge, or people have to something.
So like
Shouldn't
$3
be
to have
automatic.
something
Okay.
laminated off.
Not-
So,
But
do you want me to talk to Jeff as a private citizen or as a representative of the open space?
why
and
don't you
ecology?
try as a private citizen, and if that doesn't work, then let us know.
Okay.
It would be much more fun to have a subcommittee appointed to go and
Seize the laminator.
Full punch card.
I've been tempted
laminator
to just cut the
subcommittee.
cord. But that might be destruction of city property and I'd get arrested. Okay.
Let's go to the safer ground of staff updates.
I'm sorry it bugs me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have little things like that too that just make me kind of go, yeah. You know.
I don't make a big list for mine, but Shelter Belt is not now, but is removing Ivy and Castaños Canyon with the remaining funds from FERC. So they also are putting up erosion blanket today so that what they do doesn't create a slide. So that's going to happen weather permitting, over the next 2 weeks, or maybe a little bit longer.
Thank you.
We're looking at whether to have some of the money and have them plant some plants back at Firth, but kind of if it stays not raining, we don't want to put money into plants that aren't going to survive, so we might just say finish it, take the ivy out until you've spent the money.
Get rid of the ivy.
Remember when we walked back there? There was like a pile of trash, kind of that had been thrown over from the road. There was like a bag, and it got stuck on a tree, and it was falling down. Last time I was there, it's still there. Is it possible either to have them or somebody from the city come and just pick it up? Because I don't know whether it's a new bag of trash, but it looks a lot like the.
That was in Firth.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got that in my notes, but I will note that too.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, it's kind of like when you're standing at that down tree right at the end of where the where that burlap kind of ends. If you look up right below the road, somebody took a trash bag, threw it over. It's wedged against a tree, but it's open on both ends, and the trash is kind of falling down.
Okay. Yeah.
That'd be great.
As far as the dirt bikes on Quarry Road, that's a little convoluted with the fact that that's actually, the county doesn't own that, so that part of that is state. And so I've reached out to Ramona, and she gave me some contacts, but they haven't gotten back to me if there's an appropriate number to call. So I'll try and get contacts to you if I get a number that seems to make sense other than the county park main line. And as far as a fence goes, the city limits actually jog right there to the other side of Quarry Road. So it's, city limits are on the so in front of Littman, city limits are south of Quarry Road, and then right there it jogs, and city limits are north. So we wouldn't have the jurisdiction to put a fence there on our own. So so it's kind of we're still wrapping our head around that one, a good way to solve it.
Okay, I'm not even sure that a fence is the best answer, but for committee members who don't know, a few weeks ago I was out at basically at Owl Canyon, a little bit back from the skate park, and there are really deep ruts in the hill back there, and that hill has received a lot of restoration attention. It's being ruined. While I was there with Mary Gudekamst, who used to be a member of this committee, 2 kids on dirt bikes came through the skate park and went back up on the hill and started running around back there, and we told them to stop, and one of them said he would, and the other one just went straight back up there and did it again. And these are motorized bikes. They're not mountain bikes. They're really digging some deep holes. So that's the backdrop to this.
This Brisbane PD should come out, because I believe that the Quarry Road is kind of under our jurisdiction, but you can also call the county.
The thing is that these kids, were there for a few minutes, but they're probably not, it's very slim chance that some authority is going to respond when they're actually there. So the reason for the fence discussion was, is there a way to make it harder to get in there with a motorized vehicle?
In either way, so I've reaching out to a few different people to try and see if there's a contact or, what to do. I don't know. They probably don't have license plates, but we'll.
Thank you. No, they didn't have license plates, and I did call the Brisbane Police Department, and I could practically hear the rolling of the eyes over the phone. It's just like, are they still there? No, they're gone. Well,
the question is, are they taking those bikes on city streets to get there?
Probably.
I was just specifically discussing the location of it and the practicality of a fence. So
okay.
So not going to dive into, if they're not allowed to ride in the streets, if Brisbane PD catches them, I'm sure they'll enforce traffic laws. But I was addressing Glenn's concern about what do we do if she's out there and sees them again.
Yeah.
So I'll try and find a contact if there's somebody, an on-call park staff, but so far I don't have anything solid to report.
Great, Bob. Thanks.
And can we alert the Brisbane PD that this is an ongoing thing?
I think Karen has done
I
that.
did communicate with the police chief, and she said, definitely call the non-emergency number, and as resources allow, they can post themselves there. They can check. She thinks maybe they come back into town on Trinity. There are other ways that they could come back in, but if they can be there and catch them, they'll cite them.
Yeah.
Okay. Bad chance.
So we've already talked about a few of my updates, so I think this will be pretty quick. I was going to note the planting day on February 3rd. Again, we had 38 people. Nice turnout. Bob and I had a nice debrief.
Can you Photoshop me in? Because I got there right after the picture.
Yes, the 38 people were not all there right at the very beginning when we took this picture, but...
Want us to Photoshop gloves on you?
Yeah, that too.
I will note that Mountain Watch went home with a few extra gloves because apparently that was not well communicated to everyone. I think maybe we mentioned it at the beginning, which maybe is why you didn't catch that. But so they got a few extra pairs of gloves, and all in all thought it was a nice, vibrant event. And then we've also already noted the EV charger ribbon cutting event, which happened on Valentine's Day. Again, we had a pretty nice turnout, and in the 2 weeks since that has gone live, we are seeing people using it. So, this is only 2 weeks worth of data, but I checked this afternoon, and And these are results so far. We've got 38 unique drivers who've used the station, 98 sessions, already over 1 megawatt hour of usage just in that 2 weeks. So,
How does that compare with the kind of usage we need to make it viable?
I'm gonna ask the same thing.
it's pretty much right on track for hitting our goal.
Okay, good.
You know, I
Good.
think it's still really a little too early to
Okay.
to say.
Yeah.
With only 2 weeks of data, but it's nice to see it starting, and you know, we'll keep looking for opportunities to promote the fact that it's there. I know it's up on the maps now, so people are finding it, and we will keep trying to get them using it. Keep an eye on the data as we go through this little 6-month pilot to see how we want to keep things going.
Awesome.
Can I just ask a question on that?
Yeah.
We avoided 441 kilos of. How's that figured? Or
I would have to check the charge point. They have a whole description of how they are calculating that.
but well, I guess my point is, if somebody has an electric vehicle and they don't charge it there, they charge it somewhere else.
This is just strictly from the charging happening at that station.
Right, but if they charged it at home instead of there, they're still saving. You know, I mean, I guess if you have an electric vehicle, you're already saving the stuff regardless of where you charge it. And I mean, I get the point that it's that particular charger is giving that much energy, but the savings comes in purchasing of the vehicle, not in the use of it, I guess.
Well,
Or
a lot of
No.
a lot of reporting places like to quantify, and that's
Sure.
fine. But
No, yeah,
there's
yeah.
also the fact that if there is a charger that's convenient, someone that might not have bought one then decides, oh, I
that I would count as a true thing. Okay, cool. You know, again, devil's, yeah, okay.
And I would say our impact is probably actually higher than what they're giving us, because I doubt their assumptions are looking at the fact that we have 100% renewable energy
Right.
powering our station, whereas, you know, this is kind of a more generic background assumptions that they're using. So ours is probably higher than this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like when you say a vehicle is emissions free, it's just not coming out of the vehicle, but if it came from a gas or coal plant or whatever, then the
Right.
emissions were
And ours did not, but this is
Right.
strictly saying we've avoided that much because of the fuel.
fair enough.
So this was actually a report that we got from the Office of Sustainability on their energy efficiency programs. It kind of relates to some of the things that we've talked about recently at the CAP subcommittee, and this was brand new as of you know, the last couple of days. So I thought I'd go ahead and share. Home upgrade and advanced home upgrade projects. So this is from middle of 2013 to middle of 2017, and unfortunately, we've only had 3 projects, $3,400 in rebates through that program, but it's not nothing. So people are finding out about it. There's been 2 outreach events over that 4-year period, just within the city of Brisbane, 88 total countywide.
I was just curious, they don't have per capita figures on there, because that might. Okay.
Apparently we have 4 registered home upgrade advisors in the city of Brisbane. 5 pending units going through the multifamily building enhancements program,
Oh, that's good.
which is a little newer of a program. And then they have had a number of trainings, energy code compliance trainings for building departments. I cannot answer whether anybody from Brisbane has gone through those.
I've gone to some of them in the past. They're very interesting.
We did hold one. Okay, great. Small business direct install. So we've actually had 15 projects go through that program. That was one we had specifically been interested in finding out about. So there are people taking advantage of that. And then the 10 retrofit projects that the city has done as well. And
10 out of 70. We're killing that.
Good.
You're doing
yeah.
great, and we have perhaps more on the way with our Energy Watch grant.
Great.
And last but not least, the Energy and Water Saving Toolkit. We've had 12 checkouts just in the 8 months since they rolled that program out just here in Brisbane, and almost 400 countywide.
Did you exclude Barbara's? Just kidding.
I still have the one at
This
my
is
house.
just from Energy Watch.
Speaking of which, do you still have that, Kina?
I do.
Yeah.
I'll bring it back.
Yes, someday.
Yeah, no, give me a good reason to come in and visit.
You still have more meetings, you know, you're not done.
No, I'm not. Really?
Not till new person's appointed. You cannot leave until there's a new person appointed.
That's not what I understood.
That,
Can I ask about the Frith Canyon stuff?
So I got a draft license agreement from the city attorney just recently
Yeah.
and reviewed it, and it's pretty simple. Like, you are the licensor, whichever the licensor or the licensee, and we have the liability and you don't unless you have negligence. So we have that. The next step is to approach those couple property owners and see
If they'll do it.
if they're willing participants.
That's great.
So we can report back on that.
Yeah.
Bob said he was interested, so he might be the one to go make those contacts.
I'll go knock on the doors.
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
Report back in 2 or 3 meetings if you're here.
getting permission
Uh,
on private property for the Firth Park Trail.
Yeah, so I went out on the thing and, just kind of trying to improve access to that Frith Canyon area going up through Frith Park and see if we can get to some of that open space up there. Because the Shanky Bakery property was access to open space. And so, it would be great if we could use some of that money to access open space. And that's one of the best areas in terms of, the central Brisbane.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was to weatherize the couple spots of the trail that get impacted and
Yeah.
maybe kind of make it official and put a couple signs out there. But we found that the route that people use goes over to private property, so it'd be nice to legitimize
Yeah.
that. And if we didn't, just go back to, I never knew.
Yeah. Did we ever find out why that one area, once we get up there and we turn, how Google Maps showed that as a park area? Did we ever figure out what the discrepancy on that was or how?
Oh, but I'm going to refer that to Bob.
No, that's interesting. I'll try and contact Google to see where they get that because I do a lot of mapping, so there's other things Google does that gives me a good reason to call and ask how they came up with that.
Yeah.
Because they certainly the two that are private are within that green area that they indicate as a park. And
Right, and then there other parts are just acres lots that we own, right? So, but they're not officially a park.
yeah, so Google Earth Pro, I don't know if you ever had that.
Huh?
It was free for a while. It was,
Yeah.
And then they used to have parcel lines on there for a short while, and they yanked them. So maybe they got whatever they were doing. They had so now they no longer show parcel lines. So I don't know. I'll see if I can contact Google. That'd be a fun
Yeah,
option.
yeah. I go on Zillow and Trulia sometimes. I can find the parcel lines at just the right level of magnification. You can see them. So, yeah. All right. Cool. Thanks.
So just two more super quick things. Karen and I had our cow recycle call with the state representative and Teresa from Scavenger and Maria from our office here. So that is moving forward. And we also have scheduled a Bosca landscape class, water-wise edible gardening for spring. And we strategically situated that near Earth Day. So it's going to be on Wednesday, April 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. So we'll start getting some promotional materials together and getting the word out about that.
So is it here?
It'll be here.
Oh, I've already been to that one. It's
Oh.
really, really good.
Excellent.
That's on it's a Wednesday?
Yes. And it'll be here in this room, and it'll be a kind of mixture of lecture and kind of mini hands-on workshop. So
I think there are different people who teach it, but the one I went to in Redwood City last year was excellent, and I would highly recommend it. They actually have a whole series of workshops throughout the whole year, and I think that I liked the offerings a little bit better last year, but it's definitely worth going. There's one I'm going to go to later in the year, and I can't remember what it was. I wrote it down, though.
I think they're still getting their brochure and everything together for the
Yeah,
spring
it's up on the
season.
website, though, I think.
Yep.
And then, Michelle, you were going to, I'm bugging you about Mountain Watch. they did the edible natives a couple while back, and couldn't get away that day, and you promised me they'd redo it.
I don't know. I promised they would redo it, but I will ask. It was
Okay.
Ariel who did that, edible natives. I think it was Ariel who did
You promised me you'd let me think that you were going to do it again.
Well, you missed Saturdays on. We had a plant sale last Saturday.
My husband went.
Yes, I saw him.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
drowning in it again.
Okay, I wrote it down, and you can send me an email, and I'll try to
Okay.
find out.
Because I really was excited about that, but
Yeah,
I couldn't make it. Too many things
I
going
can't
on.
tell you what he said during it because I was busy cashiering. So
I believe that's all I had.
Can we clarify what the official policy on the terms of service of?
Truly, I did read the policy is that the existing members continue to come to meetings until new members are appointed. But the interviews for OSEC are on March 13th,
Okay.
and they are hoping to, at the March 15th meeting, seat whatever members they select.
Did they get any applicants?
Yeah, we got 3 or 4 applicants.
Okay.
So we may not have 7, but
Okay.
we'll still have, it's a 5 to 7 member committee, so.
I have to say today I was feeling a little sad because I've really enjoyed my 6 years here, and
you can reconsider.
I know I have some other commitments that make it really hard for me to. I have to talk to my management.
Well,
I guess.
and the application period is closed, so it'd be kind of
Yeah,
a special.
I know the council members.
You can get yourself.
FEMA can work it.
Yeah, no, but I don't think I. Yeah, well, anyways, that's something to think about for next time. Okay.
Does
And
that mean you're not
somehow
going to
we're
March
getting out of
13th
here on
meeting?
time. I don't understand that.
What?
I was just saying somehow we're getting out of here on time. I don't understand.
Well, wait. If Kima's not coming to the March 28th meeting, I just want to say that I really appreciate the work that you've done and the dedication and thoughtfulness that you've applied to your role here. And we will really miss you because you really bring a whole different perspective sometimes. And I personally have appreciated it, and I have really enjoyed working with you on the committee.
I've really enjoyed it too, and I'm very grateful to Councilmember Lenz for suggesting this. When I first moved to Brisbane, he told me about it and thought that it might be a good fit for me, and it certainly has opened up my eyes to civic participation, which wasn't really something that was after I got my Eagle Scout thing, civic participation just really wasn't. But yeah, I've really enjoyed my time here, and who knows what will happen in the future. Maybe I'll come and make public comments. And Karen, I'd love to continue the conversation on the Frith Canyon Trail.
Definitely, and I tried to use that as bait. I
Yeah.
sent him an email and kind of gently tried to pressure him to renew, but we understand the other commitments and that there's a lot. We asked the committee to review a lot of materials and get on subcommittees and spend time, and I understand that that's impactful sometimes.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens with the 3 applicants. Who knows? It's been a pleasure serving with each of you and all of you. So
We will.
We're gonna have to have like a little Kima party at my house or something.
I'd love it. With as long as all the dinnerware is disposable or compostable.
Yeah, I'll put it all in the dishwasher.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Yeah.
Didn't have to ask that one twice. Yes. All right.